guitarist Jocelyn Gould hails from the Northland, Winnipeg, Manitoba. Oh yes, it's very cold in the winter. It's cool in the spring and warm in the summer, but in her studio, it's hot and she's cooking some great music. Welcome to Strictly Jazz Sounds. This is Steve Browngen. In this episode of Strictly Jazz Sounds, I have a conversation with Jocelyn Gould. She's a professional jazz guitarist who fills all the shoes it requires to drive a successful career. Jocelyn shares her journey from pretending to play a cardboard guitar at the age of 4 to winning a Juno Award for her first album, Elegant Traveler. She discusses the challenges and triumphs of her career, including her education in the U.S., her experiences in New York's rough and tumble jazz scene, and her recent endeavors, including her podcast and latest album releases. Jocelyn also explores her passion for mentoring young women and non-binary people in jazz, highlighting the importance of diversity in the music industry. The conversation touches on the intricacies of guitar playing, her teaching career, and the financial and logistical challenges faced by modern musicians. Jocelyn Gould graciously provided 3 tracks of music for use in this episode. The first is from her latest recording released in 2023, Sonic Bouquet. It's a Juno-nominated album. We're going to listen to Trailblazer, that features Jocelyn Gould and Randy Napoleon on guitar. Will Baness is on piano, Rodney Whitaker on bass, and Quincy Davis on drums. This can be found on the Jocelyn Gould music label. Later in the show, you will hear 2 more tracks, this time from Jocelyn's second release, Golden Hour, and that's also on the Jocelyn Gould music label. This was dropped in 2022. The second track, Serendipity, has Jocelyn on guitar, but also on vocals. John Forden is on tenor sax, Will Baness on piano, Rodney Whitaker is on bass, and Quincy Davis on drums. And the third track, Gemini, includes Jocelyn on guitar, Will Baness on piano, Rodney Whitaker on bass, and Quincy Davis on the drums. To make sure you are one of the first to hear new episodes of Strictly Jazz Sounds, and new information such as my annual Top 25 Jazz Recordings, which you can hear in January, make sure you subscribe. Before we get into our conversation, though, we're going to listen to Jocelyn Gould's composition, Trailblazer, from her latest release, Sonic Bouquet. This is Steve Browngen, and you're listening to Strictly Jazz Sounds, the podcast where we talk about all things jazz. Jocelyn Gould, it is my pleasure to have you here on Strictly Jazz Sounds, all the way from Winnipeg, Manitoba. How's the weather there today?
Thank you for having me on today. It's beautiful. It's 70 something Fahrenheit, about 20 degrees Celsius, and it's sunny and it's beautiful. We've been getting a lot of rain, so the sun is very welcome.
So, for listeners who do not know where Manitoba is, where Winnipeg, Manitoba is, why don't you describe where you are?
Yes, Winnipeg is in the exact center of North America. So if you literally just find the center on a map, that's where Winnipeg is. It's about an 8-hour drive north of Minneapolis.
Oh.
It's very straight, very flat, not too much going on.
Now, you don't have the accent like folks in Fargo.
You'll hear my Canadian accent at some point, I'm sure, but when I moved to Michigan in 2016 to do my master's, I think subconsciously took on a little bit of a Midwestern accent. So now I'm a bit of a combination of Canadian and Midwest.
I think of all the people that I've interviewed in my history with jazz radio and doing the podcast, you have one of the most interesting career paths as a professional jazz guitarist. While a little young, I understand it all began at 4 years old with a kind of guitar. Why don't you talk about that?
I can't believe that you know that. I guess when I was 4 years old, I wanted to be a guitar player because both of my parents were hobbyist guitar players. My mom played classical guitar. She had a Yamaha classical guitar lying around the house that she liked to play. And my dad played guitar as well. And so when I was young, I decided I wanted to be a guitar player too. My parents understandably thought for sure this is a phase, so we'll wait this one out and maybe not get Jocelyn an instrument right now. So my teacher at daycare made me a guitar out of cardboard, and we cut it out and we put strings on it, and I carried that thing around as a little kid for all the time. I always had it with me until my older brother was imitating, I don't know, he was like, "Oh, you want to be a guitar player? This is what guitar players do." And he like smashed it over his head as if he was.
Oh, we're imitating some British guitar player, huh?
Yeah, yes, exactly. So that was the end of that particular instrument.
I tell you, daycare, if it wasn't for daycare, you wouldn't have had your first instrument.
That is absolutely true. I prefer ones that you actually can play, so I'm happy to have moved on. But yes.
Later, though, you did pick up the guitar, real guitar, and music had captured you in your life.
Yes, I started playing guitar for real when I was 13 years old. My older brother showed me how to play power chords on the instrument. So for any music theory people, that's just the first and the fifth of any chord. So they can be major or minor. And
I remember trying to do the same thing.
Ah.
My wife had a guitar sitting around the house, and it's actually one of the things that attracted me to her is that she was playing guitar.
Wow.
And so I took at it and I said, "Show me these chords." And I'm trying to play the blues. But go ahead. I'm sorry. You've got a great story here, but I just had to tell you that.
That is so awesome. Oh, cool. So we've both been in the same position.
Yeah.
That's so great. Yeah.
And so you go ahead and you get into the guitar, and I'm so fascinated by how much you delved into this, how much you engulfed your life with this, and how fast it took you.
Yeah. I think back to this period this high school, junior high school period of my life quite a bit. I don't really know what happened. I just became completely immersed with trying to learn how to play. And at the time, it was more to accompany myself singing songs that I liked. Although I started learning, I became interested in how to improvise. I didn't know how music worked or anything. I was just using my ear. But in junior high and high school, was totally obsessed. I would play for 8 hours a day if I could. And it was a really important outlet for me as a kid. I think it became my uh, creative identity pretty quickly and my source of self expression and expressing what was happening in the world around me. I was writing a lot of songs. I wrote hundreds of songs as a kid too. So that really became a big part of my life when I was a teenager.
Psychologically, teenagers go through a whole
Yeah.
lot.
Yes.
There's a whole lot going on, and this is no surprise to anybody who's listening because we all did it. But to find an outlet like music, and a lot of kids do, and yet you went beyond what was probably average for a kid to get involved in music, but took time off from school, or better known as skipping.
Yeah. Yeah. I discovered this hack where if you showed up, this was in grade 9 or grade 8 or 9, that I just learned that if you show up at my particular junior high, if you showed up at the very end of a class, they couldn't mark you as absent. They just had to mark you as late.
Oh, that was good.
And you couldn't get suspended for late. My parents would get my report card and they would be like, "Why do you have 90 late?"
Oh, that's impressive.
And I would just be like, "Oh, it was just like I was only like 1 or 2 minutes late for class. And my teachers, they keep saying that I'm late." But really, I was like skipping it all the school because I was like, it felt so important to me to be spending time on the instrument.
Yeah, I was a teacher anyway.
That makes sense. I did a chemistry teacher who was like, I was really good at chemistry, and I actually did the majority of a science degree before I moved into music. And I had a chemistry teacher in high school who also really liked music. And I think I also just excelled at chemistry. And he was so encouraging. He would bend the rules a little bit for me.
Oh, one of those. Oh, you were lucky.
I was.
Yeah.
I was.
You decided that you went to college, University of Manitoba, and you were in chemistry. And then you went from chemistry to music for your master's.
For my undergrad still.
Oh, still for your undergrad. Okay. So you changed midstream.
Yeah, I did 3 years of science and then switched to music.
Oh, my
And I had to
God.
start back at year 1 in music.
Ooh.
So I spent 7 years in undergrad.
Professional student.
Yeah.
But it seems to have paid off.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see the path that you've taken with that. A lot of musicians also are very good mathematicians or scientists.
I think it makes sense. It makes total sense.
The numbers, the science of what you're doing. John Coltrane created this incredible piece of mathematical theory that he did, and on which he had created his musical system so that he could improvise the way that he did it mathematically.
That's so incredible.
So, and if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go see it. There's no two ways about it. So you go from Winnipeg to East Lansing for graduate school for music. And then you go to Toronto. No, it's going to be from there you go to New York City.
Yeah.
And in New York City, you're on the streets jamming.
Yeah, yes.
Tell us about that. Talk about your experience. What were the high notes? What were the low notes? Pardon the pun, but
Yeah.
it is not all a good time.
No, that is true. I knew that I wanted to move to New York, and initially that was a big part of my deciding to do my master's in the United States, was to get the student visa, just which would allow me to be in the US, and it's much easier to move on to working visas in the US if you've been a student prior. So New York was always what I wanted, where I wanted to be. And so when I finished my master's, I went straight to New York. So that was 2018. And I, just spent all of my time going out to sessions, having sessions with people during the day, just meeting as many people as I could and playing as much as I could and learning as much as I could. And there's really no better education, I think, than doing this, than trying to integrate yourself on a music scene that you want to be a part of. And of course, it was full of ups and downs. New York is there's just so much happening all the time. And I think,
I call it intense.
yeah, it's very intense. It is very intense, and it can be so beautiful. And you can be at a club and suddenly you're standing beside one of your musical heroes and getting to hang out with them and getting to play with people. The first time I stayed there for an extended period of time, which was summer 2017, I showed up, and within a week I had sat in with Russell Malone at the Vanguard and had played a tune at Smalls with Roy Hargrove. And
oh, that's great. Oh, that's a story. That's great.
So these are the types of opportunities and learning experiences and just life experiences that you can find there regularly. Of course, there's also hard moments where maybe something doesn't go the way you wanted, maybe somebody doesn't treat you in a really nice way, or so it can be in one day you can have an extreme high and an extreme low. It's a very, as you say, it's a very intense city.
My understanding is as well, and obviously I understand, but you won a Juno Award for the very first album that you did, Elegant Travel. I should let listeners know that Juno is somewhat equivalent to the Grammy in the United States. Juno is in Canada. And you won your Juno for, what was it?
Instrumental Jazz Album of the Year.
Instrumental Jazz Album of the Year. What a special thing to happen coming right out of the gate. It's, to put it in another perspective, this is like Samara Joy coming out with her first major recording. And she won her 2 Grammys. What was that like for you?
It was so affirming, I think, that I am on the right path. And particularly at that time in 2021, for this to happen in Canada, we were still very much in a lockdown state until almost mid 2020. And to get this type of affirmation, my album came out. That album, my first album, was released on March 20th of 2020. So I didn't get to tour. I didn't get to do the things that a person would hope to do with their first record. So for this to happen,
it's essential for any new release anyway.
Yeah.
You have to do that, and you couldn't do that. You guys, we didn't get much news about the Canadian lockdown, to be honest. We really didn't. So you were still pretty much in a lockdown in March of 2022?
Yeah, I think that's about when things really started to open, was like April
Really?
2022. You couldn't even travel. There was a period of time where you couldn't even travel provincially. So that was like a difficulty for me. I had come home to Manitoba. I was living in Toronto. I had come home to Manitoba and I was like stuck there basically. So it was, yeah, very just a really hard time for musicians up here. And so there was no in-person awards ceremony. So that Juno, I won just like sitting in this room on my computer. And yeah, so just to have something, it felt like some real moment of shining lights in what was a tough couple of years.
Oh my goodness gracious, you betcha. Third album, your third album, Sonic Bouquet, was nominated for a
It
Juno.
was.
Same category?
Same category, yeah, Jazz Album of the Year.
Wow, way
Oh,
to
thank
go.
you.
I mean, so you're cooking.
Oh, thank you.
And that was released on October 13, 2023.
Yes.
There's a great story that you have, and it doesn't have to be very long, but a great story on how you put the recording together for Elegant Traveler. Man, what is that? And it's amazing.
For
I want my listeners to know this.
Sonic Bouquet, you mean? Or
Sonic Bouquet, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So actually, sometimes I've seen a couple articles that have misinterpreted the story. So what happened, or maybe I wasn't clear when I wrote it out. What happened was, in February and March of 2022, I was so fortunate to be asked to do this cross America tour with just this incredible band, and we were kind of shining the spotlight on the music of Bessie Smith, Billie Holiday, and Nina Simone, with 3 vocalists, and talking about the lineage of these musicians and how one couldn't necessarily have existed in the same capacity had their predecessor not been there. And so we did this long tour all across the US, and that was a really exciting for me because it was finally getting out and playing again.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, yes. And when I got asked to do this tour, it ended on March 30th. March 31st, it ended. So I flew back to Toronto, but I had already scheduled my band to be flying in on April 1st, the very next day.
Oh.
So from all over.
Oh.
Rodney Whitaker and Randy Napoleon came up from Michigan. Quincy Davis came up from Texas. And there were a couple people already in Toronto. So we did a run at a club up here and then recorded that week. So it was very much.
Oh, geez.
So it was very much get off the road get off a 2-month tour and just pivot completely into this album. And so that's where that album came out of.
Oh, you must have been fried.
I was a little fried. I was a little bit fried, not gonna lie.
Oh my gosh. No, I know what it's like to burn the candle at 5 ends.
Yeah.
Your teacher and mentor, Randy Napoleon,
Yes.
wrote and performed on 3 compositions on this album. And I just want to let you know, Last of the Rounders, I love it. I really love that piece.
Oh, I'll let him know.
Yeah, and that thing just cooks.
Oh.
But you included musician Virginia McDonald. I'm not familiar with her, but she plays clarinet. And she swung into it like an old time affair while simultaneously meeting today's increased interest in the clarinet. And then there's a definite interest that has been increased in the clarinet. Was that the reason that you included her in this album? Was the rationale? And I'm going to guess that Randy was a producer for this album.
Yeah, we put it together.
Am I right on that?
Yes.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Why don't you talk about that? Talk about Virginia McDonald. Talk about the idea of including a clarinet in an album with 2 guitars. Wow.
Yeah, so when I was choosing people for this record, I was living in Toronto and I knew I wanted to include a couple Canadian artists on the album. And Virginia we had never met prior to that week because of COVID. And
Oh, go ahead.
yeah, we had interacted a lot online, and she is the daughter of one of Canada's really great tenor saxophone players, Kirk MacDonald. And she just, like, when I saw these videos of her playing such incredible jazz music on the clarinet and improvising in such an amazing way, I didn't even think about the fact that she was a clarinet player. I just was like, oh, she's amazing. She's such a great improviser. I was more thinking about her language than the instrument that she plays it on.
Versus the
Yeah. No,
Okay.
she's speaking the language so incredibly. And so I just asked her to be on it just because I thought she was so amazing. And I always knew that I had wanted to do a project with Randy as his former student, and we're still just really great friends. And so I wasn't really thinking about instrumentation. I was thinking about what musicians I wanted to play with and just what people I wanted to be around. And so that's how that front line of 2 guitars and clarinet came to be. And then once I had chosen these people, I had to sit down and be like, okay, how am I going to arrange something for 2 guitars and clarinet? How is that going to work?
I found it interesting as I covered a lot of your music, realizing that you really like to write.
Yeah.
You're a very active composer, and as you said, you wrote songs back when you were in high school. I was surprised to see that only one of your compositions made it on this album. Why is that?
I think that was a product of having been touring right before. And then also, I think because my 2 albums prior to that had been primarily originals, I thought, oh, let's play some standards and just change it up a little bit. I did just record my next album last week, and
Oh, breaking news.
and that one is 8 originals and only 2.
Oh, that's got a name for the album?
I'm going to call it, this is the first I'm talking about it, I think I'm going to call it Portrait of Right Now.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a title. Like
Oh,
that.
thank you. It's my working title at the moment.
Okay. Okay. I'll make sure that people know about it that
thank
way.
you.
Portrait of Right Now. So you did that. You're a writer. You're a writer, songwriter, music writer. You're a producer. You're a band leader. You're a manager. You're a promoter for yourself and for Benedetto. Okay, guitar. Okay. And let's see now. You're a publisher. You're an educator and a podcaster. Let's see here. What else? Is there something that I missed?
Agent?
Oh, that's right. You're agent. You make me tired.
A lot of stuff. Yes.
That's a whole lot of stuff. What is requiring you to fill all these roles by yourself? What compels you to do it that way?
I think the current climate of the music industry requires musicians, for better or for worse. I think there's benefits and pros and cons to this, but I think today's music industry, in order to make a living as a musician and in order to be able to support yourself, you have to, in a lot of circumstances, I think we are required to fill many roles ourselves just because of how the infrastructure of the music world is set up right now. I think artists are having a harder time supporting themselves, so it's hard to support a team if you're not able to cover your own costs first.
What are you seeing as the real major issues with that infrastructure?
I think touring has become a lot more expensive and difficult, so I think there's less revenue coming from touring just as traveling becomes more expensive and as just general costs become more expensive. And music is more available to consumers than it ever has been, which I think is incredible. However, it's very hard to earn revenue from music stripped from sound recordings. These days, they're primarily free for the most part through streaming platforms, and musicians are just seeing very little monetization for their work. So I think just through a number of factors, it's just tough these days for musicians to find monetization for their work. So for me, the more I can wear, the more likely I am to be able to be the recipient of whatever monetization there might be.
So for the listeners, in trying to understand what happens when they get their music from Spotify or Apple or Amazon or whatever, they pull it up, they pay Spotify for a subscription, and they have ready access to all this music. And it's not like Spotify is when a person goes to someone's music, a musician's music, that suddenly Spotify shoots off, 10% to the musician. What happens? What's that?
Yes, Spotify's and these streaming platforms, their rates of payment have changed over the years. And in fact, they just changed so that in order to even qualify for monetization through Spotify's platform, you need to surpass 1,000 streams. So the first 1,000 listens on a song are now the artist receives 0.
It's free of charge.
Yeah. And
you have given away your music.
Yeah. And then after that, one figure I've heard, and I'm not sure, this was a while ago, so this might not be relevant. And I didn't hear, I just heard it not necessarily from a credible source, but one figure that I did hear was that on Spotify, it takes 229 streams to make $1. And that does not, from what I've seen, that does not sound incorrect to me. These streaming platforms are just not supporting artists.
Particularly as a young musician, as a young artist, trying to make a living with that. And then on top of that, the travel, as you said, and you're living in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's not, you can travel from New York City to Philadelphia in just a few hours. You can be there, or even in Washington D.C. You can go to Baltimore. You jump in a car in 45 minutes, you're in Baltimore. It's much harder.
It's very isolated.
In Canada to travel. Wow, what is this about a jazz musician in Canada wanting to stay in Canada?
Yeah, so for a long time, I thought I would be in New York forever. I thought I was hunkering down for at least some number of decades in New York City. And then a number of factors, I won a teaching position in Toronto, and then COVID brought me back to Manitoba. And I think just the increasing Manitoba has ended up being somewhere that I've said, okay, this can be my home base. And I think it's because of if I'm being totally honest, it's the increasing cost of living in bigger cities. It's just really hard to pay rent and just buy groceries these days. I was in Toronto, I went to the grocery store, and a pound of butter, like one of those just like bricks of butter, was like $14 or something. It's just so expensive.
Man.
And so, yeah,
Okay.
so for the time being, and I also do love, it's important to me that I get out into nature a fair amount. I do love being somewhere that within a 20-minute drive, I can be in, like outside the city in a national park. And
Yeah, that's not New York.
yeah, but yeah, it's really cost of living that is rising in all of these cities that I think is just making it tougher and tougher. Musicians are just getting pushed further and further into, I think, unsustainable conditions.
Humber College,
Mhm.
it looked like it was a really exciting program. And and you got so involved, and then I'm going to guess, just like every other place, because did they just shut everything down or what?
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was one day I was in a meeting on March 13th. I was in a meeting in person. I was teaching classes. I was doing auditions. And then on March 14th, everything got shut down. And came back to Manitoba and taught a year and a half full-time online.
I bet you that was pretty intense.
It was very intense. I felt really fortunate to have the opportunity to be able to do that. My heart really went out to the students who,
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard to learn group improvised music by yourself.
It's not the optimal way to do that at all. And trying to acquire a degree or certification. Wow.
Very difficult.
So that was hard on you too, wasn't it?
It was really hard to be even. I know people had just even a number of physical issues that came up just from not getting to move around enough. It was for everybody. It was a really tough time, a lot of screen time, a lot of sitting at my computer that year and a half, which is not, I think, how people generally want to spend their lives over the grand scheme of things.
At least you hope not. You hope not, anyway. And I'm still trying to get this straight. So you made the decision then you were going to put all that behind you and focus 100% on your music career.
Yeah, so I left my position at Humber this past December, just a few months ago.
Okay.
And I did this just because I love teaching and I feel so fortunate to have had the opportunity to teach such wonderful students. But I think right now I have a lot of opportunity to be playing, and I really wanted to seize those opportunities. So I decided to maybe put full-time teaching to a later time in my life so that I can really go all in with my performing.
Wow, way to go. I have to commend you for that leap. What a path you took in your life. It's a whole nother journey you're on now.
Yes, it really is.
And you got started with it with your podcast.
Yeah, yes. So that was one thing that I really wanted to do that I had been thinking about for a number of months was how cool would it be to get a band into a studio once a month and rather than record a record, record kind of like a show and we'll play some tunes and we'll answer questions from that people ask online and just try and make a little bit of a community out of it. So it's
Yeah.
been really fun so far, and it's fun to just spend time with my friends, and it's just like low key, and it's meant to just be fun. And eventually, I would love to get a live audience in there as well.
Have you ever seen Emmett Cohen's live at Emmett's
I
Place?
have, yes, I have.
That's a
It
show.
absolutely is. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing.
He should have you on his show.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah, he's had Russell Malone on in his place. Oh, I wanted to ask you the type of lyrical playing that you do. You're very lyrical in your work. Have you spent time listening to somebody like, let me see here, Mary Halverson or Ava Mendoza to write and perform in a very improvisational way as a way of the writing a little bit? Have you ever tried that? Have you ever done that?
Not as much as I would like. I would love to check out Mary Haverson more. And I know there will be a time when I do. I haven't spent as much time as I would like on her music yet.
She's
I
amazing.
know. Yes, she is.
Another thing, I'm going to ask some guitar
Yes.
things here. Okay.
Ready.
What do you think about slide guitar in jazz?
Ooh. No one's ever asked me this before. I think it would be, I think that's amazing. The slide,
Go
I
ahead.
think slide guitar a lot. I think it's meant to imitate, or in a sense, I think it imitates the human voice. So I think that it's just, yeah, an extension of everything. I think slide guitar would be very cool in jazz music. Is very cool.
You ever heard Derek Trucks play?
Yes, of course.
And he recorded an album with McCoy
I
Tyner,
did know that. Yeah.
and it's called Hark Guitars. But this recording had Bella Fleck, Derek Trucks, Bill Frisell, Mark Ribot, and John Schofield.
That's amazing.
And it's an amazing album. I had it out. I was going to flash it up. Okay, I put it back on my shelf. And Derek plays slide, and it's an amazing album. He is, as I said, he is one of 5 musicians. But the thing is that the way that he gets McCoy Tyner involved in it is amazing. And I've seen interviews that talk about this particular session. And so I was curious if you've ever heard someone do this or ever thought about doing it yourself. Have you ever tried playing slide?
I think I've messed around with my friends' slide, but I don't own one. And no, I have spent virtually no time. But
You have to get a Coricidin bottle.
of course, yes. Yeah, yes. I would love to. I think it's so beautiful. And there are some guitar players here in Winnipeg who are really known for their slide playing. And yeah, I think it's an amazing sound.
So your finger picking style, though, it reminds me. I know you're really into Wes Montgomery, and I'm not too sure who
Yes.
isn't, but and smoking at the half note, yeah.
Yes.
Uh, I killed that album on the air. I over a 20-year time period, I played that album a lot,
Amazing. Amazing.
particularly Impressions. But we're talking about the style. Emily Remler comes to mind, and Grant Green. So those two seemed to me to have had a great deal of influence on your picking style. Am I in the right category? Am I in the right path?
Yeah. So I do what's called hybrid picking. So I hold a pick between my thumb and index finger, and then I use these three fingers
Ah,
to
got
finger
it.
pick. So
Yeah.
it's called hybrid picking, and a lot of jazz guitarists play in this way just because it's the best. A compromise is like the best of both worlds. Um, yeah, so that's how I learned to pick. And yeah, Wes, of course, didn't use a pick, and Grant used exclusively a pick. But yeah, so it's been like a combination of influences. Joe Pass did
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a combination, and going with what a lot of contemporary guitar players are doing is hybrid picking.
Now, given the fact that there are so few
Yes.
women involved as jazz guitarists, um, you said that you're particularly passionate about getting more women playing jazz and more non-binary people playing jazz, and that it's really important to you, and that eventually you want mentorship to come full circle. Why don't you talk about that?
Yes. When I found myself as a young person in my teenage years wanting to be a guitar player, and especially when I got into wanting to learn jazz music, I just didn't have any um there were no women in my community for me to learn from, and I just didn't have the resources to seek out the women that are out there. Um and so I think it's impossible for my identity as for my gender identity to not have affected my experience as a musician, because there are so few women playing guitar, and often young women and just women of all ages end up the only guitar player in their community of guitarists. And so as I got a little bit older, and I always lamented that, and it was a source of sadness for me as a younger person when I was learning, just that I didn't get to have a mentor that I could relate to in that way. I had incredible mentors, but someone that I could just talk to about things relating to my experiences as a young woman on the scene. So I found as I started getting a little bit older into my mid and later 20s, I found younger guitar players, gender diverse guitarists, starting to look up to me and contacting me and wanting to get to know me, maybe take lessons. And this was really positive for me in the sense that I felt I could use my ability to mentor younger women to give the scene something that I felt I never really got to have. And I think that just the more visible gender diversity becomes in the music world, the more it will foster more gender diversity for the next generation. So it feels really important to me as just something that I feel like I can contribute to the music world in order to make it more welcoming for future generations.
So teaching was probably really important for you. It put you in that position. It gave you those opportunities to extend yourself and make yourself available.
Yes, and I have made, because of my years, these past several years of full-time, of just diving into teaching, I've created many relationships with younger musicians that I think are really positive. And yeah, I think are a really important thing for me as well as them.
So now you're in your mid-30s and you're able to give of yourself. That must feel really good. I know it sounds trite to put it that way, but to know from whence you cometh to where you are now, you are in a position to give.
Yeah, it feels very rewarding to get to be a community leader and try and create the types of communities that I would like to be able to see or be a part of, communities that feel positive to me.
So the podcast is another place for you, and you're almost giddy
Yeah,
sometimes. Uh,
that's true.
I know I'm not the first one to tell you, but when you play, you've got a grin that takes the room.
Yes. Yeah. It's very it feels very joyful to me.
That is the term. You're full of joy. You're full of joy. It's the spark comes out, the light glows. So your music is not only important to you, it's important to others. I was curious for your first episode. How did you get the questions? How did people know? How did you communicate with folks to let you know that they have questions and they can send it to you? I was curious about that. I mean, I'm doing a podcast, obviously. How did you do that?
Yeah. I just put out a little video on my Instagram and my Facebook just saying, I'm
Oh,
recording something and I'm going to do a question segment. So if you have any questions, hit me with them. And I've been doing this before we record every episode, and it's been just fun to see people. It's like as soon as they're given permission to ask something, it's just flooded. And sometimes I'm getting like hundreds of questions.
yeah. Yeah, I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
What was also interesting was having you play. uh, You're in a studio. You're in a recording studio.
Yes.
How is that happening?
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh, it's not just everybody that can say, I'm going to go down to the recording studio and I'm going to hang around and I'm going to do a podcast.
Yeah, it's pretty ambitious. It is. So a studio. We're actually going in tomorrow to record. I,
Your next,
yeah, I have an episode coming out tonight, actually.
okay.
Yeah, so there's a studio just down the street from me here that recently got a piano, and I really like to play quartet. And it's also just a beautiful space visually. So I assume,
Yeah, it's really pleasant.
yeah. So as soon as they got a piano, which is something that not all studios have, in other studios, if in town here, if you want to record, you have to get a piano brought in. So once the studio got a piano, I was like, okay, let's go. I had been brainstorming this idea for a while, and we tried it, and it was super fun. And we've just been doing it ever since. I guess it's almost 6 months
It,
now. And I think it's fun to think of something and just use your creativity and say, oh, this is something I would love to do, and then figure out how to make it happen. And it requires a certain amount of bravery, I think, to try something new. So it's
oh,
really
yeah.
fun, yeah, to just do it and try and be fearless and put things out into the ether, and hopefully people will enjoy them.
I'm going to briefly talk about guitars. Boy, I know I'm running out of time, but daggone it. I'm really enjoying the
Thank
conversation.
you.
You're a Benedetto. Your guitar is
Oh, thank
gorgeous.
you.
That is, I got onto the Benedetto site and I spent some time taking a look at their guitars. The first guitar that I picked up was an Epiphone. What makes the Benedetto a perfect jazz guitar? what are the benefits of an arch top compared to solid bodies or hollow body guitar? Why don't you explain that? Because I found it really interesting to take a look at the session that you did on your guitar itself, and looking at the Benedetto, I would love to have picked those up.
Yes, I guess I'll just speak generally to arch tops first. It really is about what solid guitars versus hollow body guitars and arch tops. They both they give different sounds and they have different potential for different sounds. So the type of guitar that you pick to play will depend on what sound you're going for. And so the guitar players that I love, that I've studied, and the sound that I want is an arch top sound. And so that's a hollow body, and it generates a very different sound from a solid guitar. It's partially acoustic. The sound comes in to the guitar through the F holes and bounces off the backboard of the back piece of wood and comes out of the instrument. And so that's different from a solid guitar where the sound generated is entirely electronic.
So the backing of your guitar
Yeah.
then is a real important piece of that.
It is.
The type of wood that you have would matter, wouldn't it?
It does. And also how you hold your guitar matters. The reason that I hold my guitar in a pretty unique way compared to some other jazz guitar players is so that the back piece of wood isn't touching anywhere on my body, and it actually helps the sound bounce off. It doesn't get dampened and it doesn't get absorbed. So even just the way you hold the instruments, arch tops are like a whole other beast. It's like suddenly this whole acoustic thing that you're dealing with that you have to learn about in terms of sound generation.
And yours has a maple backing.
It does.
Doesn't it?
It does.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Maple backing, if I recall, is in a spruce top.
Yes. Yeah. You got it. Yeah.
And so what's the impact of that spruce? What does that do?
I actually don't know as much as I would like about the different types of woods and why they're used for certain elements of the guitar. I'm always like asking questions whenever I see the folks at Benedetto. They're really good friends of mine. And I was like, why this? Why that?
Okay.
But it's definitely not my area of expertise.
When I took a look at them and then I looked at the way that they made these, I was fascinated by the wood. Wood has so much to do with the sound.
Yeah.
I saw that Rick Beato
Yeah.
had talked about the Telecaster, and he said the Tele or Telecaster feels like a natural jazz guitar, and Julian Lage plays a Telecaster. I'm like, what in the world is he doing playing a Telecaster? What do you think about that? It seems to me that there are obviously many possibilities for a Telecaster.
Yeah, so it's just a totally different sound, and there is a history of it. And interestingly enough, there is a real Canadian history of jazz guitarists playing tellies.
Really?
Yeah, Canada has so Lenny Breau, who actually was from Winnipeg. He played a telly, and Ed Bickert from Toronto played a telly. So because of that, a lot of Canadian jazz guitarists play Telecasters. And yeah, I think it's really just like an individual choice about what kind of sound you would like. But there definitely is like a historical lineage also of tellies being played.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Fender Stratocaster. A Fender Stratocaster. I think the sound is a little thin on
Hey,
it,
yeah.
and which is really interesting because Susan Tedeschi, that's what she
Yeah.
plays, is a Fender Telecaster, and she likes using the wah with it. But using the bar is a whole nother thing
Definitely.
to it. There's Fender Telecaster and Fender Stratocaster, and jazz doesn't quite mix. Isn't what do you think?
Yeah, fewer people do it. There's Schofield and
Yeah,
it's definitely a sound. I would say Telecasters seem to be more popular for jazz music.
yeah. Schofield likes to sound a little bit more electric, more closer to a rock
Very
sound.
true.
And it just seemed to me that that doesn't necessarily fit. It doesn't fit for me
Yeah.
anyway. But Gibson hollow body, semi hollow body, blue sound, and I know that Derek Trucks likes playing. He also likes playing tellies, but um, and of course everybody knows BB King played a Gibson. What do you think about using a Gibson guitar?
Before I moved to the US, I played a 339. So I loved it. And I found it to be a really versatile guitar too. I was playing a lot of different styles. And so I felt like I was able to move from gig to gig. I was playing a ton of gigs in Winnipeg. And one would be I would play a jazz gig and then maybe go play like a country singing, like just all sorts of. I was just working as a general guitar player. And so I found it to be a really versatile instrument in that
Oh,
sense.
I bet.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
really liked it. But then when I moved to the US and started studying with Randy, first thing he said was, that guitar is not going to work. You need to get yourself an arch tom.
So Randy was your influence
He
for
was
that.
my influence. Yes. Yeah. And I love the sound that he gets. Yeah. He really encouraged me to get into arch top sound generation.
Congratulations. Randy has had a big impact, obviously, on your life.
Yes.
I understand that you are a whiz with the whiz. It's a wonderful story. The Wizard of
Oh,
Oz.
yeah. Yeah. Yes.
The Wiz.
Yeah. Yes. I memorized that musical when I was like a very 5 or 6 or something, very young. I knew it front to back and learned all the songs, and it still comes in handy knowing not in the movie, but in the musical, which I learned because my dad, for his career, was an elementary music teacher, and he would put on musicals. And he put on The Wizard of Oz when I was very young. And so because of that, I learned the verse to Over the Rainbow, which is such a beautiful verse. And it's come in handy many times being like, oh, I know the verse from when I was very little.
You've got it. You've got it. You can play that on the guitar as well as sing it.
Yeah.
And singing is so important to learning how to play guitar.
I think so. I was in a master class of Mulgrew Miller's once, and he opened his master class by saying, we all want to be singers. We would all be singers if we could. We can't all be singers because not all of us can sing. And so we have to learn to sing through our instruments. And that really resonated with me. I think that music comes from this part of us that is intangible, indescribable thing, but it comes out through our voice. So I think we should, or for me, when I just think of playing an instrument basically as just like an extension of our voices.
That's a great way to wrap up the show. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Jocelyn Gould went into the studio today to record episode 6 of her podcast, and if you happen to miss it, episode 5 was released yesterday, May 24th, and Jocelyn's next album, tentatively entitled Portrait of Right Now, will be released soon. And she's expected to perform here in Columbus, Ohio for a Tribe for Jazz on May 31st. A busy woman for sure. Jocelyn's music really swings, and so does she when it comes to making it all happen. Thanks to Jocelyn Gould for use of her music from her Juno-nominated album Sonic Bouquet and Golden Hour. Thanks to A Tribe for Jazz for helping to make this connection. The theme music is from Johannes Wallman, another Canadian, from his album Precarious Towers. It's festival time, y'all. Head on out to your favorite festivals and support live jazz wherever you are. Subscribe and you become one of the first to catch new episodes. Thanks for listening to Strictly Jazz Sounds. I'm Steve Browngen.